Open your eyes.
The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild was a phenomenal game. Some have even gone as far as to say that it might be the greatest game of all time, and I can't really blame them. After I'd finished my game and gotten all the 120 shrines, fuck the Korok seeds, they can stay hidden, I was of that opinion as well. Now that some 8 months have passed, I'm able to take a step back and see the game's flaws, and I realize it's not quite as clear-cut as I once thought, but I digress. At the time of writing this, it's already run off with one major Game of the Year award in the form of the Golden Joystick Award, voted upon by the British public, and more are sure to follow. It single-handedly carried the Switch through its first 2 months, and is still today one of the leading forces behind the console's continuous success as we approach the end of 2017. But one question that's had gamers, experts, journalists, and possibly even some major figures at Nintendo scratching their heads is this: what is next for 3D Zelda? And I'm not talking about from a formulaic standpoint. God knows there's enough videos on YouTube talking about that as it is, but rather from a timeline perspective. We see these games go back and forth over multiple timelines with every new addition to the series. So where and when will the next game take place? Major Zelda fans will already be groaning at the thought of discussing the timeline for the billionth time, but I'm afraid I'm not only going to discuss what's already there, but rather complicate the timeline already provided to us by Nintendo even more. It doesn't help that there have been 3 brand new Zelda titles since the timeline was released to complicate things even further. I do want to put just a quick disclaimer here regarding the Breath of the Wild timeline. I have absolutely no fucking idea where Breath of the Wild is set. It's obvious that the game takes place long after any other game in the timeline. Director Hidemaru Fujibayashi may have butchered that, even went as far as to confirm that. But then there's the issue of the hundreds of references to different games scattered across every single timeline. So this has kind of led me to believe that there might be some kind of converging of timelines that leads to Breath of the Wild, but honestly, who knows? The whole game could be set in Link's fever dreams after he's gotten salmonella from eating too many raw chickens, for all I know. For this reason, I'm going to just completely ignore Breath of the Wild as its possible timeline placement for this theory, and just kind of assume it's happening even after any theories that I'm presenting, especially considering the fact that Ganon might actually be defeated for good at the end of Breath of the Wild. But anyway, so let's have a look at the places the next Legend of Zelda game could be set within the existing timeline, the official timeline. So looking at that horrible monstrosity that is the official timeline, and reading through the 70 or so pages of the history of Hyrule and the Triforce, there are a few stories that haven't been told yet. The obvious ones are all the stories following the existing timelines. Neither the Adventures of Link nor Four Sword Adventures wrap things up in their respective timelines, and the Hyrule Historia even goes as far as to basically confirm that there will be further games in both timelines. After the Adventures of Link, it reads, "The future of this timeline is yet to be unraveled." And following Four Sword Adventures, it reads, "There may come a time when the land will have need for the Four Sword once again." So let's dissect these two possibilities separately. First, the hero is defeated timeline, ending in the Adventures of Link. There are no real holes in this timeline, as A Link Between Worlds and Triforce Heroes apparently fills a tiny gap between Link's Awakening and the original Legend of Zelda, which leaves the only option to be post the Adventures of Link. This leaves me, as a theorist, in a bit of trouble. You see, this means that literally anything can happen from that point, and I mean anything, as this timeline shows loads of different continents and kingdoms over its 7 games. However, as it's unlikely to me, personally, that Nintendo will set the next installment in their mythical bestseller in the same region, aka Hyrule, twice in a row, especially since they clearly want to follow up with more open-air types of games, the Hero is Defeated timeline does feature plenty of places when considering setting. so it's definitely not unlikely that the next game could be set in this timeline. So what's the likelihood of the next game being set in this timeline? I mean, fuck knows. I'm not here to provide any answers, I'm just here to present my theories. Cut to the end of the theory when I say that the next game will definitely be a sequel to Skyward Sword and is about the Anyway, let's move on to the hero is triumphant and leaves Hyrule and disappears in Termina and... Fuck, I don't even know what's happening here. But regardless, the conclusion here is pretty similar to the last timeline. Basically, there aren't any real gaps to speak of. Majora's Mask happens straight after Ocarina of Time. The Twilight Princess happens just a couple hundred years of peace after Majora's Mask, leaving no room for another legend to unfold. And there is more peace until the events of Four Sword Adventures, which once again leaves us with the only option being a new game having to take place after the events of the last game of the timeline, which in this case is Four Sword Adventures. Maybe a multiplayer Zelda, similar to Triforce Heroes, making use of the Switch's portability. If I was a betting man, I'd say that's a pretty strong possibility, but I doubt that will be the next big 3D adventure. More likely it will be a 2D adventure in the same mold as Triforce Heroes. And I'll do you viewers a favor and save the timeline-destroying shit show of theory that I have for last, even though I do think it's definitely possible, and instead go to what I think is the most likely theory of all of them. Given AG Anuma's comments on how open-air games will be a standard for Zelda, I was looking through the timeline to see if there were any other possibilities that stood out as new and exciting, but at the same time large enough in scope and diverse enough in geography to encapsulate the same feeling Breath of the Wild did the first time you played it. And to my surprise, there actually was. There's a hole in the timeline, only described through text in the Hyrule Historia, without any games to accommodate it. A story filled with political intrigue, wars, a constant fight against evil that puts the Triforce and its rich history in the center of the action. The establishment of the Kingdom of Hyrule. A story that could be overabundant in interesting characters, landscapes shaped by the ancient civilizations and the relatively new inhabitants from Skyloft. A royal family where, according to the Hyrule Historia, many members were born with special powers because of the lineage that connected them to the goddess. You could have an entirely new land to discover, with throwbacks to the best things about Skyward Sword, the world itself. Imagine the world from Skyward Sword, but without the restricting shackles of walls and having to go to Skyloft every 5 fucking seconds. And now imagine that expanded upon, massively, to not only include areas from Skyward Sword, but new areas as well. And now imagine that game taking everything Breath of the Wild did so well, and refined some of the things it didn't quite succeed at, like enemy variety, bigger, grander dungeons with massive, diverse bosses. Maybe even try and find a balance between the more traditional ways of getting equipment in previous Zeldas, with the free feeling you get of getting everything in Breath of the Wild. Like, maybe make it so that a player can find things like bows and swords and shields and everything like that in the wild, but have certain traditional items like the hookshot, maybe some special arrows or something, hidden away in dungeons to be unlocked. I personally didn't really mind the lack of progression in Breath of the Wild, since I felt the progression came naturally as you got better at the game. But since that was a massive criticism, this could be a way of fixing that problem. Okay, so now that I've gotten this fantasy into my head, it's never leaving. This game is what I want. Please, Nintendo, I'll get down on my knees, I'll open my mouth wide and... Sorry about that, I got a bit carried away. Anyway, moving on swiftly to avoid any questions. I'm sure you're curious as to how Nintendo can fuck up that timeline even more than they already have. I mean, separating it into 3 separate timelines after Ocarina of Time doesn't really make any sense. If it's separated there, then why doesn't it separate after every game? You can always lose, after all. But, anyway, salt aside. There's only one other place I can see another game fit into the timeline. And that is before the Wind Waker, but after Ocarina of Time. The hero is triumphant in Ocarina of Time, and then disappears never to be seen again. At least that's what the legends would have you believe. But what if, just what if, a hero did appear, but wasn't strong enough to defeat Ganon? What if Wind Waker takes place in another fallen timeline after the hero is triumphant in Ocarina of Time? That would explain why the hero didn't appear this time, the only time in all of Hyrule's long history of 3 timelines, I may add. It makes no sense that the hero wouldn't appear to fight Ganon again, unless he lost. The people believe that the hero didn't turn up to save them this time, but the truth will be that he did. He failed, thereby getting forgotten by the people. The gods, realizing that their chosen hero had failed, flood Hyrule before Ganon can get his hands on the Triforce, and Wind Waker happened several hundred years later. But what if the hero won? That's goddamn fucking right! What I am suggesting is... drumroll please... Really? You couldn't just find drumroll on the internet? You had to slap your thighs? But fucking anyway. A 4th timeline where the hero defeats Ganon and the gods don't have to flood Hyrule! Kill me. I know. Another timeline would be my worst nightmare as a Zelda theorist as well. But if you think about it, it does kind of make sense. Or rather, what makes sense is that there was a hero after Ocarina of Time who failed to defeat Ganon. The new timeline is a bit of a leap, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think it's a possibility. If this is the case, this would leave Nintendo with a whole new timeline to set games in, and even a story leading up to the timeline split. A game with maybe an unreasonably hard final boss to signal that you winning this fight isn't actually the canon ending. How cool would that be? A game where you're literally not supposed to win the final fight, but if you're skillful and prepared enough, you might stand a chance. Honestly, I don't see this as the next major 3D Zelda experience, but in a decade or so, when the next one comes around, I can see this. I can see this happening, maybe with a more traditional structure of dungeons and items as callback, but even with a similar aesthetic to the Wind Waker. From a story perspective, I think it would be absolutely awesome, but from a theorist perspective, it would completely complicate everything we know about Zelda so much. Thank you for watching my little ramble about where I think The Legend of Zelda is heading next. Whether you agree or disagree, I would like to encourage dialogue and discussion down in the comments. What do you agree with or disagree with? Do you think the story revolving around the establishment of Hyrule Kingdom would be as awesome as I think? Do you think that the mere idea of a 4th timeline is ridiculous? And in that case, why? Let me know, and also let me know if you want to see more videos like this. Maybe about Zelda, maybe about other games, who knows? I've been John, thank you for watching.